I tried writing a script for this for the first time, and then I gave up. I actually wrote quite a bit. It started out, hang on, I'm gonna start reading my script now. This started out as a video about how I don't enjoy YouTube anymore, but it turned into something else. I still want to make a video about that, but here's this one for now instead. I did have a disclaimer I wanted to say. Oh yeah, I tried to make this as cohesive as possible, but I don't really do cohesive. My brain doesn't work like that. I think some people would like call it squirrel brain. It kind of just like jumps to random things. It makes sense in my mind and it's like connected in my head, but whether or not it's actually connected is a different story. So I'm gonna do my best to make all this make sense. I am an artist, I think. I'm currently a full-time art student. I've always drawn and painted and been crafty, but I don't really feel like an artist. I haven't made a single piece of art this summer aside from doodles here and there. Now, I could attribute this to my lack of time. I have 3 jobs after all, but I don't think it's that. I saw this video a couple of weeks ago made by this person who was very mad at Marina Abramovich and her existence. They talked a lot about like shocking art and how it has ruined us and desensitized us. I agree with some of what they said. We have become incredibly desensitized, but I don't blame the art world for that. It has been a contributor, but there have been and still are much more pressing things at fault for this. I cannot tell you how much human blood I have seen. Whether it be from violent acts or otherwise, things have just kind of stopped being censored online. I've seen body parts blown off, torn off, ripped apart, etc. I've seen children strewn about in schools after shootings and animals tortured for seemingly no reason. I've seen bombs dropped on homes, hospitals, senior centers, fleeing people. I've seen so many other people hit by cars and buses. I've seen motorcycle accidents and plane crashes. And all while this is happening, people are making fun of them, making crude jokes in the comments. You know, of course. Now, by the way I describe it, it almost sounds like I've been looking for these things, but I promise you, I have not been doing that. In my dream world, my feed would consist of nothing other than witch videos, baking and homesteading videos in the lesbian cottagecore way, not the Mormon mom of 30 kids way. Cats, books, and ASMR sprinkled in there. I have been an unwilling participant in every single one of these assaults against my eyeballs and brain. I don't say all of this to oppose this creator purposefully, but to simply offer another perspective. One of the things that admittedly upset me most about the video was how sure they were that their belief about what art should and shouldn't be is the correct belief. I want to talk more about right versus wrong later, but for now I would simply like to quote E.A. Buchianari. Art is in the eye of the beholder. I really hope I pronounced that right. I looked it up, but I couldn't find any video other than this meme posted on Facebook. Seemingly, I don't know. I've tried. I really did try. I actually did a little bit of research for this video. I did try. Now that I got that off my chest, I could end the video here by simply saying, yeah, no one person can decide what art is for others. Art is incredibly personal and reflects our own teachings, inner beliefs, and worldly perspectives. But I'm not going to do that. I want to keep talking. Now, I will diverge a little bit here, but I will come back and try to wrap all of this up with a conclusion later, kind of like I've said before. I'm trying really hard to not just stare at my script. I've never done anything scripted before, and I didn't memorize it because I wrote way too much. I also have a really bad memory, so. With my art specifically, I realized I'm not very good at self-directing. My best art pieces have been prompted through other people's ideas and opinions, through school projects and questions asked by classmates and professors. I worry I will never have any ideas sparked from nowhere. But, here's me overthinking. Does any idea really come from nowhere? Mosaics. I actually, like I said, finally did a little bit of research for this video. Have you ever heard of the phrase, "We are mosaics of everyone we have ever loved"? I don't know if it's mosaics or mosaics. I should have looked that up. I didn't think to do that. I should have done that. I'm so sorry. If I'm saying it wrong this entire video, I apologize because that's really annoying. I wish I had a card so I could just hold it up. I am very sorry if I'm saying it wrong, but I'm going to continue saying mosaics. There's been multiple versions of this phrase, such as, "I am a mosaic of everyone I have ever loved, even if for a moment," and "I'm a mosaic of everyone I've ever met," but they all follow the same idea. We are who we are because of the influence of others. I often wonder, and I've probably asked this in previous videos, is there such thing as a true individual? Is individuality determined by our thoughts and opinions, which are, like it or not, influenced by those around us, whether it be people or media, etc.? Or maybe is it determined by our ability to pick and choose who and what we listen to? If someone grew up completely isolated from everything and everyone else, no media, no human interaction, maybe even no animal interaction, would they be the only true individual? I hope we don't test that, because that sounds horrible. We hear all the time that there is no original story, or that it's incredibly difficult to create one. And I think that might be what's happening to the internet too. Like I said before, this started as a video about why I don't like YouTube. I kind of talked about this in a previous video about the Instagramification of comments. And this part kind of talks about that. It's about, like, yeah, I'm just going to keep going. I think it's connected. I think that art and the internet are very interesting. I feel like the internet is one big art piece in a way. I don't think that art is, like, the internet. Well, I'm trying to, like, think about this, because I did not script this, which is why it's suddenly so bad. I do think that the internet is kind of an art piece. A mosaic, if you will. I mean, that's more like literally. I don't really think that art no, I do think art reflects the internet. Not all of it, obviously, because there was art before the internet. But I think that the internet has permanently changed art, and I don't think that there's any way we can, go back to the good old days, if you will. Which is one of the things that Creator was talking about, how, like, art is ruined forever, and, like, the only true art is art that stands the test of time. Which I have opinions about as well, because what about, like, all the people that, don't have access to really high quality oil paints, and, there's so much art that was destroyed, that it, like, was good art. I don't think that art, anyways, that's a whole other thing. I'm not gonna I don't want to, like, just bash on that video, because I did agree with some of what they said, but this isn't a clapback video. I was just thinking about that while I was writing this. What was I saying? Oh yeah, art and the internet. I think the internet has forever changed art, and I don't really think the internet would be around if not for art. So, it's tied together. I promise. I promise it's tied together. Anyways, I've seen people talk about AI becoming an Ouroboros of sorts, but I think social media as a whole, maybe internet users in general, are already there without realizing it. If you don't know, an Ouroboros is a snake that, like, eats its own tail, so it's kind of just infinitely eating itself. Perhaps the reason everyone is so mean right now is because that's all they know how to do. It started out with trolls, and maybe now the generation that grew up interacting with trolls just genuinely doesn't know how to form their own opinions without bringing down others in the process. This was also tied into the why I don't like YouTube video. It's not that I don't like YouTube. See, this is the problem with a lot of this. I don't dislike social media. I don't dislike YouTube. I don't dislike the internet. I just don't like how people use them, I watched this really good video about cyberfeminism and how the internet has so much potential, and, we just use it to be mean to other people. It was a good video. Maybe I think I might try and put that in the description or whatever. Anyways, I don't know where I left off. Scripts are stressful. What did I write a script? I know that it's a good thing because it like keeps me on track, but this first time for everything, I guess, and the first time's hard. Maybe subconsciously we see the internet as nothing more than a fighting ground for opposing others and being right just to be right. I also want to talk about, that kind of ties back into the right just to be right thing, or like right versus wrong, which was, like I said, one of the things I disliked about the video. I mentioned it briefly, but I did not mention that briefly. That was part of my original script. I'm just going to ignore that part. Most of us probably grew up being taught to memorize things in school and nothing more. There are right answers and there are wrong answers. I definitely grew up learning that way. However, I may have briefly mentioned this in another video as well. In parentheses, I have a horrible memory. My first semester of my sophomore year of college, I took a class where our first unit was all about class and how they affect school systems in the United States. I can't speak for other countries on this because I didn't grow up in any other country, nor have I done any research, so I apologize. Most of my videos talking about like my life experiences are going to be about the US, just because that's where I am, unfortunately. In the States, we have 3 main classes: lower, middle, and upper. Now I'd argue it's more like lower, middle, upper, and super uppity upper, which skips like 5 extra class steps, but we won't get into that. I grew up in the middle class, as a majority of us probably did. Some people divide even further and go into, lower middle class and upper middle class, middle class. In the town I grew up in, I was definitely upper middle class. However, in the grand scheme of things, it was probably more middle to lower middle. Sorry, my camera keeps... This whole video is probably going to be crooked. I am so sorry. I have my phone set up, like, on top of my laptop, just by my pop socket. That's so annoying. I'm so sorry. Maybe I can, like... I should have done this before. I never plan stuff out. Okay, that's better. Why did I do that in the first place? Anyways. What was I saying? Oh yeah, as I've gotten older and things have changed, it says, in parentheses, gesture to everything, my class has also changed. The middle class is weird. My dad makes too much for me to receive any financial aid, but I know I'm going to die in debt from going to school. I try not to think about that too much. The high school I went to was a very poor school, lower middle to lower class. I think that says middle class, that's not right. Lower middle to lower class. We were taught to follow the rules, stay in line, not speak out, ever, memorize things and not ask why, etc. But I have met people in college and also learned this from the unit in the class that I was taking, which blew my freaking mind. Because, ... Not everyone is taught that way, which is insane to me. Obviously, this isn't on the script. I just wanted to say this. When you're being taught that way in a school, they don't teach you that there's other ways to be taught, because once you're taught that, you're like, oh, why am I being taught this way? This sucks. I want to be taught that way. So they don't teach you that there's other options. And there were a lot of really weird revelations I had during this class, just because of the way I was, brought up and the way I was taught things, and how other people in that class were either taught the same way or taught completely opposite, and they were surprised that we were taught like that. Yeah, very, very good class. I liked that class a lot. I liked that class a lot. And that professor, they were really great. I feel like I had something else I wanted to say. I guess this is why people write scripts. Maybe this isn't so bad after all. I feel like an actor. I'm like, it's my own words, my own, thoughts. I don't use, AI or, ChatGPT to write anything. It's all my own stuff. It's just, super overlooked, because when I write stuff and when I say stuff, it doesn't make any sense. So it's, super, read over and edited and all that. I wanted to say something else. I don't know what I wanted to say. School's a privilege, I think. So I'm, honored, really, that I get to go to school. And I don't think that it, was that bad. I think it's fine. They weren't hitting us with rulers or anything. But it is really weird to, know that things could have been different. I don't know. I've had a lot of teachers, suspect that I have ADHD or whatever. And I used to get in trouble a lot in school, a lot. Mostly in elementary and middle school. By the time I got to high school, I realized if I just didn't say anything ever and, kept everything to myself, that I would stop getting in trouble. So I kind of just stopped. But I didn't learn that until, in high school. So elementary school, I pretty much got, lunch detention and it was mostly recess detention, every day. I did get lunch detentions in middle school. I know now that there's, a time and a place to talk, but nobody told me that back then, so there was no time or place to talk at all. It was just silence forever in high school, which sucked. But, I learned that my parents knew that I was struggling, and they didn't really do anything about it, so that was also something that was really weird, to know that things could have been different. Maybe... I don't think that medication would have been good, but maybe, extra help or, guidance, explanation as to why I was getting in trouble, and not just, I was a horrible child, because that's kind of how it came off. It was you're a bad kid, you keep getting in trouble. But I wasn't a bad kid. It was fine. It was so fine. It was actually so fine. Yeah. So, anyways, back to the script, I guess. If I can find my spot. Oh yeah. Wait, no, I already did that. Why did it scroll all the way back up again? Where am I? I don't know what's going on. Oh yeah. My partner script time. My partner grew up upper middle, if not upper class at the time, so they were taught, in schools, they were taught very differently. She, as well as a lot of other people I now go to school with, were encouraged to speak out, which is insane. That's insane. And they were also rewarded when they questioned the rules. What? Thinking, as well as art, I have learned, are privileges. Or at least that's what we have been brought up to believe. I often feel bad for philosophizing and thinking about things. It feels like a waste of time, right? I could be doing something productive, which is just another way I was brought up. Excuse me. Similarly to art, I feel like if I'm not creating good art, it's a waste of time, right? If I'm not creating something that can go into my portfolio, if I'm not creating something that could maybe be sold or given to someone, it's just a waste of time. That's just not true. Back to the script as well. My favorite art piece ever was created entirely from recycled materials. I don't think either of these things should be limited to any one class or belief system. The beauty about art and thinking is that you don't need anything but your mind to do these. Sure, art is often perceived as physical works, but that itself feels like a limitation. Singing is art, and yet requires no paint or brushes. Dance is the same. Art should not be safe for some. Art should not be anything but what the artist wants it to be. We talked about this in one of my freshman year classes. That's the end of the script. I was going to continue writing, and then I just didn't. I just came upstairs and started recording instead. We talked about this in my first year. What is art, That's kind of the whole video. And it was a really interesting conversation, obviously, because everyone comes from incredibly different backgrounds. The school I go to is massive. There's kids from all over the world, all over the country, all over the world. It's a very big school. And so there were a lot of different perspectives while we were talking about this in class. And a lot of people were bringing up, art is, whether or not it's good, art is, whether or not it can be sold, art is this and this and this. And while we were talking, we did come to the conclusion, no one person can define what art is, because it's, it's whatever. I do think that see, this is where this is the hard part. When you try to limit art, people will just push against those limitations. That's a lot of what art is it's just pushing boundaries to push boundaries. And I did agree with that in the video. I do think that a lot of times people just, do stuff to do stuff and then call it art. However, I do also think that there need to be some limitations, right? We can't just go around killing people and calling it art. That's not right. But, I mean, who am I to decide what's right and wrong? This is one of the weird things about there not being right or wrong answers. I think that the idea that there is right or wrong answers to everything is something that a lot of us grew up learning, and I do think that's wrong. I think that most things don't have right or wrong answers, and that's really frustrating for a lot of people. I mean, it's frustrating, in general. It would be so much easier if everything had a right and wrong answer, a set in stone, right, wrong, whatever. But that's not really the way that things work. And especially with art, there is no right or wrong. What I think is morally or ethically acceptable is completely different from someone else. One of the things in the video that they were really upset about was nudity. I don't care about nudity. We all have bodies. I don't see nudity as a problem, but a lot of people do see nudity as a problem, as a wrong thing, right? And maybe in some other cultures, death is not as wrong as it is in the culture I was brought up in. Maybe, I don't know. There is no right or wrong, and there's so many different experiences and cultures and perspectives out there that are just, it makes it really difficult to label things. I did actually record a video about labels too. I don't know if it ever posted. It was taking a really long time to upload, so I don't actually know if it ever posted, but I made a video talking about labels once, and about how labels are a double-edged sword. And I feel like art is kind of the same way. When I was growing up, my art was comics and drawing, and now I'm in this weird experimental video art major that talks about sound art and making weird noises and stuff, and that's art. Art is anything, really. I do think that one of the things that defines art most for me is context. I think that context can really change an art piece. I was talking to my mom about this. One of the examples that I gave was a splatter of paint on a piece of paper, right? Without context, you look at that and you're like, oh, that's just modern art, it's just stupid. But if the context is this represents, I don't know, the first rainfall during a drought or something like that, or this represents, this was what I saw after I self-harmed, or after I attempted to take my own life, or something like that. I think that the context is really important to art. And so when there isn't context, it can be kind of frustrating, for me at least. A lot of modern art is just kind of, paint splatters and stuff, and there is meaning behind some of it, but some of it is just paint splatters to be paint splatters, right? And I think that maybe isn't so much art, but even then, that's my opinion, and that's not the truth, that's not real, right? That doesn't exist. It's just my own, thoughts on things. Context, meaning, how much effort was put into something, but I also don't think that we should use effort as, what's the word I'm looking for? As a determining factor of anything, really. I think that the idea of effort is very difficult, because what is effort to some people is not effort to others, and vice versa. I mean, I have a chronic illness, and effort some days simply is just, getting out of bed. where effort other days is a full 3 meals a day, exercise. It completely changes. Effort is a nothing word, really. I don't think that we should use effort as a factor to determine the goodness of something, or like the goodness of work or whatever. Same with trying. I think trying is maybe a little bit better. But I think a better word is maybe like intention. That's a word that comes up a lot in witchcraft, is your intention behind things. And I think that through learning about witchcraft, the word has changed a lot for me, and has kind of replaced effort. I think that, this is really weird, especially in art school. There's a ton of people that just, like, don't try at all. Like, your parents are spending so much money, and you're not doing anything. What are you doing here? Why are you here? And that's really frustrating. But, I mean, maybe what their intention and effort looks like is different than mine. I don't know. Like I said, I don't think that I'm definitely not allowed to even, assume. I guess I'm allowed to assume, but I'm not allowed to judge or, say that they're less of an artist because they don't try, right? Because trying looks different for everyone. Yeah. Okay, I guess that's kind of it. That's the video. I just wanted to talk about what is art. Initially, I did want to talk about, I was like scrolling through YouTube earlier, and I wasn't finding a single thing that looked interesting at all. And I do want to make a video about that. That's kind of where the whole internet thing started, about how the internet is an Ouroboros, and I feel like I've kind of just seen everything, and the only videos that I get most of the time are like opinion pieces, like, oh, I didn't like this movie, or this celebrity's evil, or whatever, and I'm not interested in that kind of stuff. So I would like to make a video about that, but for now, I made a video about art instead. Being an artist right now is really, really weird. Like I said earlier in the script, I try really hard not to think about anything, really, because everything sucks right now. I've said this a lot. I've definitely said this before. And being an artist right now feels so incredibly useless. Like, it genuinely feels like the most useless thing I could ever spend money and time on. Art, right? And thinking about things. But, it is important. And I don't think that it should be a privilege. I think it should be accessible to everybody. All the time. Constantly. Every day. I think that it should be taught all the time. Constantly. Every day. Maybe not all the time. There are other important things. But I think that art and thinking, especially like philosophizing and stuff, thinking about things that don't have right or wrong answers. I think that it's extremely important. And that also feels like a waste of time, which it shouldn't. I don't think that should feel like a waste of time. But yeah, that's it. I don't think I have anything else to say. I probably do. I always have something else to say. I never know how to end these videos. I'm thinking, do I have anything else to say? Stop judging yourself so much. That's the only other thing I have to say. One of the weirdest things about going to art school is I feel like I've lost my art ability. Like, I feel like I've gotten worse at drawing. I've gotten worse at coming up with ideas. I've just, like, I just am constantly judging myself. That's a waste of time. Judging yourself is a waste of time. If only I could, actually, I was gonna say reap what I sow. I think that's right. If only I could listen to my own fucking advice. But, yeah. I want to say a lot more, but I'll save it for another video. This video is way too long. Okay, bye-bye.